Thank you for inviting me. It's always a challenge when you're invited to talk about something that you actually never had talked about before. And I also saw it as an opportunity to learn. First of all, I thought that I will go through this trajectory that Walter talked about, like going from dancing, being a dancer, educated as a dance teacher, and through these different roles, and what are the things that I've learned and why has this trajectory looked like that. Okay, nice. It's nice also since when I was in leading education, I also encountered different departments and schools, and I will also talk a little bit about that trajectory. So, as I said, educated in Oslo. I'm from Norway, at the Oslo Academy of the Arts. Moved to Sweden in 2004, freelanced after education, decided quite soon that what am I going to teach? I only can teach what I learned from my teachers, right? So I wanted to get an experience. I felt like, okay, I needed to get out, I need to work before I can go back to teaching. Worked in Sweden, in Stockholm, for many years with different choreographers. And then in 2010, I was asked to be involved with the bachelor program in dance at DOC, back then, Dance and Circus Education. It was one school. Now the name is changed, as some of you know. So I was there as head of bachelor program for 10 years, leading that education. And then in 2020, I was asked to take over the position as head of department, leading the whole institution with all the different programs, master programs, bachelor programs, and freestanding courses. Later on, 2022, I applied for the job as artistic director for Kullberg. So that's kind of roughly the trajectory. I could also say that last time I performed was in Tansem August 2022. So last time I was on stage was 2 years ago, starting to long back, but I have tried to keep, let's say, dancing ongoing, which more or less, sometimes more success than other times. But I will come back to that. When Walter asked me about my trajectory earlier this year, and he was like, what was driving your direction? Why this trajectory somehow? And I think the first answer I gave him was like, I like to learn, and I'm driven by curiosity, to put myself in a situation where I can be exposed to new things and being challenged. So I wouldn't say, like, looking back, I wouldn't say that it's like that it was kind of a strategic choice. And then I like making that I do this in order to get there, I do that in order to get there. It was more that what was sparking my interest. And then I said, like, yes, of course I would like to come and talk about this. And then later on I was like, why did I say yes? I never talked about this. Who's interested? And la la la, all this self-doubt. And like, a lecture is not, I don't have a recipe, So I will not be able to share a clear practice with you. I will not be able to share a scientifically proven result or a recipe that can be of any use, I think, a ready-made. But when I was putting some time on looking back and reflecting on my own trajectory, it made me think of what I brought from dance and what I learned from dance and dancing, and what I brought from that into these different roles during these last 20 years, and also what I have learned from these different roles. So the two of you from Stockholm, I did a presentation like a year ago, right? You were there? Were you there? No, it was part of a canon course in dance, but shortly, yeah. So some of the things that I speak about, they know a bit about it, of course, in relationship to the school that you go to. But first of all, I would like to read something that says something about where I am in relation to dance right now. I care about dance and choreography. I'm interested in its possibilities, and I truly believe that the knowledge produced through working with your body in collective and artistic processes is something extraordinary. I like to move, and I like to be in the studio. I like talking to people about dance and choreography and thinking together about how to create situations for experimentation and explorations. I do believe in the potential of art and the impact it can have on people in society. I'm interested in facilitating art that makes people think critically and create spaces for questions and reflections. I love to work closely with other dance artists who have a deep physical knowledge, who are experts in their field. I love to use my experience as a dancer to work with questioning what contemporary dance is in a place that explores the ideas of how dance can be defined, how dances can be danced, produced, reproduced, and presented. I work from what is here and now, the materials, ideas, methods, etc. From there, we develop, suggest, experiment, and challenge ideas and ways of working, to dare to change and develop from what is here now, rather than what we should become. So this was something that I wrote when I started working at Kullberg, that I needed to somehow grasp the idea of what is it that I'm interested with this, what is the possibilities within this dance choreography field for me. So I will jump a bit. So going back, thinking about my trajectory, I had to start with thinking about through dancing practices. And what brought me into dance? Why? Yeah. And why this type of dance and not this type of dance? And, like how you make choices somehow, and how you are driven by a curiosity to figure out the possibilities. So I would say that I was very much drawn to the things that was not pre-decided, nothing that was finished formulated. I was drawn to the experimental part of dancing, where I could figure out new ways to work. So a dance that did not already have a shape or a formula means that I felt freer to decide a way, new shapes, new forms, etc. So I decided to work as a freelancer. There were many in my class who also was like, okay, applying to companies. But back then, in 2001, when I graduated, the company situation looked very different than from today. So I thought that, yeah, in the freelance scene, you are freer, right? Then, of course, working in the freelance scene, you're not always so free. Sometimes you need to say yes to something that you maybe, wouldn't be your first choice, because it can give you experience, and it might also be a possibility to get to know people and, to the next step. So that was like an idea that I had, that was certain freedom in working as a freelancer. And also in my earlier years, I really wanted to find, new movements, new ways to that was not explored yet, not found yet. A very naive but also quite sweet thought, and I think I carry that with me still. I am interested in things that I haven't seen before, or that I don't think that I haven't learned, or ways to do stuff somehow in a way that I haven't encountered before. And as I also said in this text, that there is something with this, like when you are in the studio working with dance, you are there with other bodies, your own body, and you are there with ideas to explore. And then it's like, what in the moment do we have in front of us that we can, dig into? And then there's something with this, that these are the materials that are here, these are the contexts, these are the possibilities, let's see what we can create. So I would say from the studio, that practice in the studio very much can, for me, I can apply it very much in different contexts. I would like to just go shortly into highlight a few contexts where I have been, as a dancer, in dancer or a maker, and I tried to somehow highlight for myself what are the things that I learned, that I remember, like, oh, this was a thing that I brought from that context. So directly after school, I worked with the choreographer Houman Sharifi, which is Norwegian, but originally from Iran. He flew from Iran when he was 12 years old. He was educated in Oslo, so we went to the same school and we got to know each other during education. We did a duet. We were traveling around a lot with that duet for many years. And we often worked outside Norway. As you know, people have residences different places. So in those years, I got to know very much about the system of residences and the international scene, let's say. From being in very, I would say, the Norwegian school or the education I had was very much local teachers. And so in that sense, that opened up a bit to a wider view on what was out there. And this was also 2001, so there was not the internet in the same way. So we didn't Google everything. We were just, we needed to go. Even though internet was there, but it was not accessible in the same way. We're not used to how it is now. So it was a time when I learned how the whole dance network in Europe worked. And artistically, I got to work very close with an audience. The proximity to the audience we were almost in the middle of the audience. We had one piece, we had the audience on two sides. I went very close. I even kissed the audience. They were on their hands. So it was the proximity to the audience was very close. And I got to practice that, to be with the audience, let's say. And also, Houman's interests were very much that art equals politics, that everything that you do within art has an impact, and that you, through art, it's it could be a political statement. So that's the awareness of the world around you, bringing that into the studio. And I remember we had a scene, for example, he wanted to have an argument between us that was based on the conflict between Israel and Palestine, for example. It was very there, and also the bombing of Iraq, all of these the things that was going on in the world, and especially connected to wars, also because of his background and conflict. But much of the basis of the my interest in how to relate to an audience, I can see was it started there. How do you relate to an audience? How are you as a performer? What are the tools that you use in order to encounter an audience? After moving to Sweden, I worked with a Swedish-Italian choreographer, Kristine, the one that you mentioned. Kristina has always been very much interested in philosophy, but also super, super specific about physical practice. It's to shift the weight and the apparatus of the body, let's say. Not so much interested in what does this piece say, like Human, like very different. But I would say that this, like the way that she also made like a really clear training connected to the choreography. Like, how do I train my body in order to do the choreography, or how make a physical practice that leads to the choreographic work. So in her work, I got to explore how to work with a very defined training that prepares and builds the foundation of artistic work. And that interest of going very deep, in depth, and examining the physical body grew during the time with her and the work that I did with her. Then later on, as Walter also mentioned, I mean, these are just highlights. There were also other people that I worked with, and this happened a bit in parallel with when I also were working at the school. But I worked with Jefta van Dinter and the performance A Quiet. And the focus in that performance was very much working from somatic practices. So very much within, inside of your body, imagining things. And also his interests are very much like physical, but then also what does it produce? So in that sense, I could say like Human's and Kristina's interests kind of came together a bit for me in that sense, that what does this physicality produce for an outcome? What are the imagery that we produce? What are the stories that we tell? And also his interest in always complexifying the body, that you at the same time that you are like aware of your hand, you are also with the elbow and the head and then the gaze, it's like trying to do everything at the same time, which is an impossibility. Was also like somehow intensified also the dancer's awareness of being there now somehow, which is very interesting. I found very interesting. Shortly, I would just say I need my phone to follow time. Oops. I did two pieces, a solo, where I worked with perception. Both of the pieces came from the idea of perception. One from the what we see and what we think we see. Very much like playing with the audience, understanding of you see this, but over here you see this because I just show one part of my body, for example. So I was playing with this visual perception. And from that piece, I got very much interested in the space of the theater. What's the possibility of the theater? What are the, let's say, what are the worlds and the magic that this room actually has the possibility to create? That we can actually make stuff, make beliefs, So from being like having also the interest in me, like it's for real, the fourth wall down with Human, I was like, magic, That's also interesting. That's also the apparatus of the theater and the possibilities within it. Then I did another piece, a group piece in 2012. That was about sound, and I was like, why do we dance to music? It's like a curiosity around that question. Why do we want to move to music? What is it that, starts? Is it like the vibration of the rhythm, or is it like, yeah, I know the heartbeat and everyone has a rhythm, but what is it really? And then this whole interest, of course, reading a lot about it and doing different tests in the studio, and I was like, I'm going to do a record, and the piece is a record. It's not, after this piece is done, then people can get their record from what the piece was. It's only sound. And the piece was called Pft, like a sound. a forced exhalation of air. So it's like that you blow the air out of your mouth and then it becomes a sound. So I really wanted the piece to also be a sound, like. And then in that project, I mean, I can also talk a lot about that, but I would say to just draw, like, what are the interests and what did I learn from it? Very much being consistent with the concept, like, okay, I have a concept, now I'm going to be consistent with it, I'm going to do it. Okay, take away, it was no sound, it was only the sound of the performers and the space and the outside space that we worked with. And I really wanted everyone in the audience also to start to listen. So it's like how to bring people into listening. So also my interest in various performative states grew in this work. And of course, not to forget all the byproducts that we also learn and things that we don't focus on, but we need to do. For example, leading a process with other people, writing applications, applying for money, writing reports, working on budgets, all the admin that dancers do and choreographers do when they need to create a possibility of work for themselves. So I didn't say that in the beginning, but I have done like a presentation and then I have a few questions. I have like 3 parts where I have questions for you that just more like a reflective possibility for yourself. So I give you like 2 minutes just to maybe write down the question. Maybe we don't have so much time to think about it right now, but I think it's connected to what I just spoke about. What is it from dancing that you have learned? It's like, what has dancing taught you? How to identify what you know? What are the skills that you have learned by dancing and working with dance? Walter? No. No. But I think we all have something with us from dancing, right? But I just give you 2 minutes to write it down, and then I can continue. Okay. Okay. So going back then to 2010, I was a dancing spirit, 32 years old, busy with performing and applying for funding, and then I was called from, I got the call from Eva Lilja, which back then was the dean at the Dance and Circus, the University of Dance and Circus in Stockholm. She was like, can we have a coffee? I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. And I was auditioning for her because she's a choreographer, and she was before she became a dean. I was auditioning for her directly after school, and I was like, is she doing a project, let's say. And then she was like, would you be interested in leading the bachelor education in dance? What? I don't know, maybe, you know. And of course she's super good, always had been very good with politicians in Sweden. She made her own studio, so she was like, you will get the bag of money and you can do whatever you want. I was like, what? With not knowing what the course syllabus was the course plan, what is a course, you know. And I was like, okay, of course it was probably, you know, but this is my memory, that it came like boom, a bit like from nowhere. Of course I had education, I had a teacher's education, I was working a lot, and I was kind of a profile dancer, let's say, in the field. So I understood that she wanted new people in that kind of had a certain role in the field. So of course, I could later on see like, okay, that was her strategy, let's say. But right then it was a bit like, what should I lead? Like, why? You know. At the moment I thought, okay, but what, you know, that possibility to actually, you know, change an education and be part of, together with others, influencing the field of dance in Stockholm. That's super interesting, you know, like, and she was like, you work on 50%, you continue working 50% on as a dancer. Of course that didn't work. I was there like 24/7, you know, like, I've never done this before. First things that happened was like, here's your phone. And I was like, a phone? Ooh, you get the phone. You know, it was like, suddenly I was in an institutional setting that was very new for me. And my learning curve was like drastically, and I of course started to think like, okay, I was not necessarily interested in leading education. I was interested in what are the possibilities within, you know, what can we do? What type of education can we make for people? And I have an interest in changing things and questioning, like, why should it be like this? Could it be like that instead? When I took over the education, I wanted to create an education that I didn't get. So what didn't I get? Where I felt like dancing, creating dancing and dances and choreography, practice and theory could stand side by side. So, and then I was also asking myself, what are, you know, then again, I was like, what do I have in front of me? What are the materials? What are possibilities? What is this context? It's like I'm asking the same question as I do in the studio, let's say. Okay, so the possibilities are like, okay, this I can change, this I cannot change. This is Swedish law, this is a document that we can change just if we do like this, you know? So learning ways to make changes within the already established system was very, yeah, I learned a lot from that. Then of course, what is the skills needed to be a dancer today? This was in 2010. How does the field look like? How many steady jobs are out there? Yes, we could see that the freelance scene was where most of the people will go to. And how could you support students to get jobs? Is also to connect them with people. So the first thing that I did was to make the education international. It was Swedish spoken, so it was mostly Swedish people there. So we changed the language, so all of the course syllabus, everything was in English. And then that opened up to international applicants, of course, and also to invite more international teachers. It sounds, I mean, it's kind of basic, but that was kind of the ground. And then, of course, rewriting the syllabus where I decided to put theory and practice together. So what I can say is that mainly what we did was like, okay, what are the basics? Dancing, understanding your body. So dance, practice, and theory. And then it's like performing. That's what we do. Performance, practice, and theory. And then choreography. Choreographic practice and theory. So that's like those main I would say courses. And then we could build both theory and practice in relationship to that. So what I then thought was that, okay, dance, practice, and theory is a course that you could really go, like, you can look at yourself. You don't need to think about what you produce, let's say. You can really, and it could be, we could work with all the different dance techniques. We could have all the different anatomy courses in that course, let's say. And the same with performance, practice, and theory. Then I was like, what are the skills that you use in order to perform, and how do you encounter an audience? How do you think about this performing in front of an audience? And then, of course, in relation to the choreography, practice, and theory, the course focused on choreographic parameters, maybe organization of the body or of objects. or texts, or maybe even writing an application, Could be this kind of more project-based. I could also just shortly say that in that moment I also started to question, it's interesting to see like in what context, what questions are sparked, let's say, in certain contexts. And in this context I also started to think about this all of, it's like, okay, ballet, contemporary dance, floor work, fighting monkey. There was like different titles to all the different techniques, let's say. And so we looked at, we started to also question these very like genre-based and sometimes very unspecific terms. It's like contemporary dance, improvisation, and then we started to play. I mean, that's also the fun thing, is that sometimes maybe you come back to the same result after, but by questioning, you learn something. So at one point we only had like floor work, horizontal, like floor work become like horizontal work, vertical work, everything that was like standing and moving in space was vertical work, not ballet, It's like, because there is connotation to all techniques. You have an idea of like ballet, oh, then I need to be in a certain way. It's like, no, it's vertical. It's just like you're standing and moving around and shifting weight, and try to see like what are the principles that we work with, rather than what do we need to kind of represent. I mean, in relation to my own dancing during these years, it was less, of course. Also, I got 2 kids during those years and tried to, family life. That's also like family life, career. But so I had less. I was dancing less, but I had the possibility to have research time within my employment. And when I had that time, I was like, okay, I'm interested in the performative skills of the dancer. What are the skills that we learn in the moment that we are here on stage? I mean, I worked with colleagues that in the studio when we were rehearsing, they looked very different than on stage. I was like, what happened to you now? Like, we are on stage, but you look very different. You have like a performative state of mind. And this only happened when they were in front of an audience. I was like, okay, there must be something that we learn when we are in front of, that we practice in front of an audience. And from that whole interest, I started to work on what are the different ways of seeing that I have been working on when I've been performing. So I had like 5 different ways of using the gaze that I was like, okay, I have a social gaze, like, hi, welcome, you're here, I see you. Then there's like a horizontal gaze that I can like open up, I don't see anyone, I just see I kind of project the room outside. Then I have like this peripheral gaze that like to be in a relation to other people, I need to somehow shift my gaze, I cannot focus it. So I explored 5 different ways of being with my gaze, which meant that I also could look back on my experience from before and keep somehow my interest in dancing next to me, even though I was in these different roles. And also when I was able to do the research, I could do the project with Jefta. So that was like, I could do that as my part of my research and being off. So it's like trying to keep somehow my development going with dancing. Okay. But if I'm zooming out and seeing that from working within an educational system in Sweden, super bureaucratic and quite heavy organizational-wise, I had no competence in that from before. But I learned writing course syllabus, education plans, conducting auditions, seeing people dance, giving feedback, inviting teachers, arranging performances, leading and planning the teachers' hours, really administrational things, recruiting professors, being part of EU projects, exchange program for students, and so on. What I want to say with that, again, is every situation, there are always byproducts of learning. And sometimes we tend to forget that because that's not where we have our focus. I was not busy with that. I was busy with trying to make this education a great one and questioning the content of that rather than thinking about what I learned from the structures around, let's say. So then, my next questions to you is this. Think about byproducts of learning and if you could identify one for yourself. Maybe even from this week or from education. And if this question doesn't really spark any interest.
Could you please articulate what byproducts is for you?
Byproduct for me is like that your attention of learning is somewhere, but at the same time as you are focusing on, let's say I focus here, in order to focus here I need to do certain things. For example, I would say a byproduct for me in making a choreography is to learn how to write the application in order to do the choreography, you know. So in one sense that your focus is not that I would like to learn how to make a application. I want to do this choreography. But in order to do that, you need to go through certain things. And a bit the same in this institutional system of a school is that, yes, I want the students to reflect on theory and practice. I need to change the course in order for us to also say like theory and practice is equal. It's not like here we have theory, here we have practice, because we all know that in the studio we both work with theory and practice. So it's like that is the focus, but then I had to learn how to write this in the course syllabus, otherwise the students couldn't learn it. So I would say that is a byproduct for me. Yeah. And then I have a second question in relation to what sparks your curiosity in your education at the moment. How do you stay interested?
That's a tough one.
Yeah. I continue. So last part is where I am now. The reason why, I mean, now I also jump. I was 2 years head of department, which was more like I was asked to somehow. It's like, can you be the head of department, please? So that was also kind of question. I was like, okay, I know this system very well. Yeah, I understand. That's great. I apply for the job. So I was that for 2 years, but I felt that I moved too far away from dance and from the studio, actually. It was suddenly even more bureaucratic, and I felt like, ooh, I really miss being close to production and dance and the studio. So then I applied for the job at Kullberg to work with an ensemble, to create a curatorial model for that company, to take over after Gabriel Schmetz, who was there before. I also thought that, in the moment I realized, in the moment you also shift role, your view shifts. So I would say that from dancing myself, being very focused on what does this, like how can I do this, like how does it work within my body, and how is that somehow transferred into choreographic work. Looking at the student, what does the student need to know? How to put the parameters in place so they can ask themselves the questions that they need an answer to go into the company context where it's like, whoop, there is an audience. So suddenly I was like, whoa, it's It's almost like you shift glasses a bit. And now I'm like, okay, the dancer's knowledge is very close to me still. So like, okay, that's one thing, but it's also an audience. And what are the things that we would like to produce? What are the art that we want to put out there? What do we want this art to do? So that's interesting with shifting roles, is that also your perspective shifts a bit. It doesn't mean that anything that, like how you saw things before, you don't agree with it. I agree with everything, but it's just like different glasses somehow. So yes, the shift happened because I felt like now I need to get myself into a different context where I can continue learning. And then I would say that one thing that I also have from dance that you probably also recognize is adaptability. To change depending on what context you're in and what is needed. So I did not choose leadership as a goal. It was not that I was like, I want to be a leader, no matter what, I want to be a leader. It was more like, okay, I did not really have a strategy. I had a desire to learn more, and then of course coincidences that you were asked, I got the question. So that's also part of the thing. It's not, I got the question from Eva if she wouldn't have asked. So there's like other people involved, and there's other people also involved in all these works, just so you know. You don't do things alone. But I had a desire to learn more about what does it mean to lead the company, and what are the potential within the company today. What are the possibilities there? So when taking over that job, I decided that I'm not going to go there and just go like, we're going to go here and point with the whole hand and everyone has to go. I need to also again see like, okay, what are the knowledges here? Where have they been? What are the things that is needed? What are the things that works? What are the things that doesn't work? And I do think that very much of the reason why I also got the job was because I have the knowledge from dancing. I think that was very much, at least now was the right timing for that, let's say, that they wanted that knowledge in the company. I was very curious about the sustainable work situation. It's like, okay, what does it mean to be a dancer that you can, do this? You can be in this context for more than like 3 months. What are the possibilities of deepening your understanding of what you do? That is like one thing that I felt like, okay, this is interesting. And then it's like, what are the production situations? How can we make it possible for people to create within the frame of an institution that is not preventing them from exploring? Because sometimes I had this, at least for the first couple of months when I was there, I was like, ooh, there is a lot of documents and there's a lot of things and policies. It's heavy, let's say, feeling of heaviness in an institution. I was like, okay, but let's see, like, okay, we need to protect the space for where we actually can create, and people doesn't feel like there's so many no's before they even start. So that's what I'm busy with now. How can you dare doing stuff? How can you dare a risk within a frame of institution, make a safe environment that people actually can explore and dare to explore the boundaries of the possibilities? And I said that to some of the dancers. We were doing a piece now that they had, it was tough. It was tough and challenging situation because of the content of the piece and it contained nudity. And then at one point I was like, we had intimacy coordinator there. We made a space that so we could, the possibilities of exploring nudity for those who wanted. But then at the same time, some of them asked me, what is too far? And then I was like, this is also a question for each individual. Like, how much, like, what are the parameters that you see that you can explore in this context? Because art making is about exploring boundaries. For me, it is. And just to go back, it's like in this context of a company, I also look, what are the boundaries? What are the possibilities? What are the things that we can say like, oh, why are we doing it like that? We don't need to do it like that. We can do different. We can, and there are freedom within the frame. It's just to find that freedom, which I also learned from being at the institution of, in the school. It's like, okay, in institutional frames, there are certain parameters that can feel like that stops a certain direction. But it's just like, if you know it enough, you will find a way somehow. That's also something that I bring with me. Anyway, yes, so I would say that I'm still, like with dancing, I'm learning by doing this job. I've been there for 2 years. I'm curious about the different ways we can be with an audience, the proximity to the audience, where I can link back to my trajectory somehow. So like right now, we will do big stage productions. Productions that are created with us. So there's not a commissioned work in the sense that do something that to an artist, do something that you did with that company. I want them to create new pieces for us. Because I think it's important that we still are in the unknown that we don't know what it will be. That's also a thing that's like unknown. I like that. I can stay in that as long as I don't get scared then. If I think like it's important to be in the known in order for something else to appear. So one big stage production, I would like to hold on to that. I think explorative, experimental dance should be able to also be on the big stages and not just in the opera houses, let's say. So I insist on doing big production, even though I know it's difficult to tour. I think it's important. It's a different thing to see many bodies on stage than one. And if we as a company, it's also a bit political. If we as a company do like duets, solos, what are the freelance scene gonna do? We can probably sell it much cheaper, So we also need to be careful so we don't squeeze people out. So I think that's one thing, big stage productions. And then we have a different format now that I'm like thinking about, and that has to do with, have a bit more flexibility in format. It could be a piece that is in a theater, but it could also be in a gallery. Maybe it could be a film. Maybe it can have another material, let's say. Maybe it could be a concert, a piece that becomes a party, that kind of more flexible formats that has a different proximity to the audience or a different relationship to the audience. And then we have a third thing where we are, it's now called pop-up. I'm also, maybe that will not be the future name of this thing, but that is a short, very, very short thing that we usually, that Kullberg has done every summer. And that is having 15 minutes just to really short pop-up somewhere in a square in Stockholm. So we've been around in many different squares. And just to make a little bit of a bow there, is that I do think like with big stage production, we invite people into our world. We say like, welcome, now we have this piece we want to show you. And the second format is, that could be it could be a different way to encounter dance. And the third format is really like, we go to you, we go out there will be people there that wouldn't be prepared to meet dance. And the way also that the dancers need to work in these different formats is an interest for me. It's very different to be there in front of an audience that didn't buy a ticket, who is like, what are you doing here? Like, I'm gonna buy my groceries, kind of, right? And like encounter that, and like, whew, that's a performative skill that you really need to work on. You need to learn it, you need to practice it. And then, So this is also something that is in my interest right now. There are many things that I work on, and I will not have time to go through it now. I saw that there was one hand up.
Yeah, but I think it's quite a long question now that I'm thinking about. It's about education.
Yeah.
And I think you stepped into this role and you had possibility to make a change, which I think is such a privileged space to be. And you did mention some of the changes that you made, but I think finishing now 3 years of BA in contemporary dance, I have noticed myself how the system is not really, I don't think it prepares dancers for this generation. So I came up with so many solutions.
Yeah.
But then I have no idea. When you started to talk about how then there's like kind of rules that you need to follow to make those changes. How realistic is to make a change in education, and can it be quick? Because it seems like there's so many stages that you have to go through when a change sometimes needs to be immediate.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't want to go back to education. I'm just like, I'm free now, I can go and I can do my thing.
Yeah.
But then I cannot go offered to go back
Yeah.
to make a change. But I don't know if I'm gonna just get sucked into this system again and how this change. I feel like there's a lot of responsibility to put on your shoulders. And like, for how long can you carry that to start to see changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very different from institution to institution. The time, and I think like there are things that you could do within. It's like, okay, if you have a very broad namings of the courses, you could of course decide what to do within each course. You could like what teachers to invite. So, but I don't know your education very well. But I would say like that's a question. I mean, it's also a question for you. Would you be interested to put time on it? Do you think it's what would you learn? Let's say. What are you curious about in that? Because of course the institution would be happy about your contribution, and because you have gone through the education, you know, talking about byproducts. I mean, you have learned a lot of things, but you also learned what didn't work, right? And that could also, you know, make change. But the question would be, of course, that if that's what you would like to put your attention to, because, and now I'm just jumping. Here is one more question, which I think we will jump now, because I want to just go here. To just, there are 2 slides that I'm going to share with you. Maybe you can just read through it fast or take a picture. But there was something with this when I tried to somehow think about what do I bring, you know, what did I learn from dancing, what did I bring? And then I tried to pinpoint really shortly how I felt I have operated. And how I could somehow, from working within the studio, translate different strategies into other roles. And one thing here that I was like, okay, should I give them like tips? But I wrote down certain things that I thought would be, you know, could be useful to just to mention. And there's something with this, that what you use time on is also what you get better at, right? So sometimes it's also good to think, do I want to use my time on this, right? So in relationship to your question about should I go back to education and do the changes that I saw was needed, you need to somehow feel that there is one thing that you feel that you have something to offer, but also that you have something to learn from it. And not just like, I know what I can give, but also what are the things that sparks your interest, I think. But I would say that being in the unknown and seek places and contexts where you can learn is important. What you invest time in is what you get better at. Being responsible, taking responsibility. Ask yourself, what could I offer? Not what could I get out of this? That's a different thing from what can I learn from it, for me. Always stay with your curiosity. Connections. Think that every person you meet could be a potential collaborator. Someone that someday could make a difference. Keep your attention on the third thing, the work we are here to do together. And that is a little bit like when you make a piece, I say like the piece is the third thing, that's what we work on. The education is the third thing, the company, like what we do in the company is the third. We are all here to work with that. We're not like busy with each other. I was like, we're working for each other. We're working for that third thing. Focus on that. Expose your interest in working with people. The only thing that could happen is that they get flattered. If they get arrogant, you don't want to work with them. I mean, this was just fun. I was writing yesterday. I was writing yesterday, and then I was thinking back that I met a Norwegian choreographer once, and I was like, oh, you know, I was newly out of school, and I just said to her, I really would like to work with you. I really like your pieces. And she was just like happy to hear it. Then like 5 years later, I get a call. Hi, I have a job. Do you want to work? You know, so it's also this like, it doesn't maybe happen directly, but it's also like if you don't expose it, if you don't expose your desires, no one will know, right? So, yeah. Then I have this, but we don't have time. Questions? I don't know, you have a class soon, right? Yeah. I mean, if you don't feel rushed, I can answer some questions if you have. Anything, or if anything was unclear, or I mean, I was quite fast in the ending here, but there's so much to say about where I'm now. Yeah.
I have a question. You said something about attitude too, like about how companies have changed from like now the 20 years, and I would be interested to hear what, from your point of view, like our experience, they are now. Or this change, and then also like you talked about the potential of a company. I would be curious, like what do you think is the potential of a company? Yeah,
I mean, in relationship to the potential of the company, it's both this that it's a place where you can work more sustainable, means that you can be deepening your practice as a dancer if you want. As a choreographer, it's different because you're invited to do a piece. It's not one choreographer, at least in the context that I am, it's not one choreographer that works and make pieces throughout the year. So it's different people invited. The former artistic director had a different model. He had like three artists during a couple of years that he worked with, but now it's different people I invite, also because I would like to give jobs to as many as possible. Opportunities. The potential, for example, to explore, we worked with something that I call archiving for the dancers. That has to do with archiving your process. It means that you start to verbalize methods and strategies and knowledge that you have, and we archive them. So one thing is to somehow lift the knowledge of the dancers as an important thing, to say like, we have time we can use on this, and you can actually, we can have lectures about it, and you know, we can invest time in deepening the knowledge of the dancer. So I see that as a potential for a place like this. And then also, if you think in 60 years, going back and looking at the piece that was made in 2024, imagining having all the experience from the dancers there in the archive, and not only a rehearsal director or the choreographer's view on it, but really like what are the knowledge that we save for the future, let's say, and who are the one that has a voice in a creative process. So that is one thing that I see as a potential, and then I started to look at what are they actually doing. Yeah, they are transmitting information a lot between dancers. So, for example, there is a new dancers coming in. I need to teach my material because you need to be a cover. I mean, that's also the, let's say, machinery of a company is that we're going to perform. So if someone is ill, we have another. It's not only those 5, we have 10. So everyone we can double, you know. Means that sometimes you're not the person with the first-hand information from creating the piece. Maybe you come 2 years later and we're going to perform it again. And you were not there when it was made. And you're then taught by a dancer who has performed it. And then it's like, what is that transition? What are we doing in this transition of material, of knowledge? So that's also a potential I see, or possibilities that we haven't really gotten to yet. I mean, I've been there for 2 years. But I see like, okay, there must be a knowledge in this context that we can speak about that doesn't necessarily exist everywhere else. And then there is also what I spoke briefly about, these possibilities for the artist to be in the unknown, even though I know that invited to make a choreography for a company like Kullberg puts some pressure on you, like I need to deliver. But it's like, how can we take care, how can we host artistic process and with care somehow, but still we know about our apparatus, let's say, and the reality of that. That we need to have a premiere and we should tour it and, you know, but how to, in the creation process, be a support rather than like, you need to follow our structure, let's say. Your first question was?
That's answered, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And with the change of the company.
Oh yeah, this. Yeah, I think when I was educated in 2001, there was certain skills that was needed in the company. Company dancer was a certain breed, let's say. You needed to be fast, you needed to have you still need somehow a big variety with working with many different people in a company. But back then I felt like, you know, I am not this machine dancer, let's say. I was much more emotional and right. So I didn't see myself in those situations where I can just jump in a certain different, you know, jump in that role and take this role. Some people are super wide in that sense. I was more particular. So in that sense, I see a change, and I see also a change now that there are more companies also working with more experimental ways, or not so formal, let's say. Yeah, there are still, and it should be a wide, way. There are so many ways to work with dance. So I mean, it's super that it is, but I do think that there are more. The freelance scene is also bigger, there are more people working, so there's a bigger variety of people within the institutions. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to ask you if you are open for internships, like as part of the studies, to maybe visit you and to see how you work and join for some time, or if you have, I don't know, because I just looked at the website and I couldn't find the concrete information, so I thought I could directly.
No, but we have internship. We have an audition every year for interns that can stay for a year. That's like, now next year we will have 2 students that will do, I think maybe one is on this Erasmus Plus, so maybe it's after sometimes you can do it after your education and sometimes you do it as part of your education, so a bit different. So every year we have 2 students, and usually we have an open call for it. And if it's a shorter thing, and that you will just come and visit, you can always write to us. You can write, actually you should write to a different email, but you can find it to our team, write to me as well. But if you are in Stockholm for a week and would like to come and see what we do, and if we are there, and if it's also a piece and things that we do that we can have guests, then absolutely, we have that quite often. Yeah, even just 1 day or 2 days, yeah. So we try to, be part of, not to be a bubble in a suburb. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kristine.
Thank you. Thank you.